Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Leslie Datsis, and I work for PBS Digital Studios within, it's our fun YouTube network wing within PBS. I work as the Associate Director of Audience Development. And so, just to give you a brief rundown, PBS Digital Studios is a network of 18 shows going across YouTube, Facebook, OTT devices like Roku, Apple TV, all that stuff. And that's focused on educational video. Right now we have 16 shows or 18 shows ongoing, whichever. And one of my main jobs is to help with launch strategy, with press outreach for new projects, as well as maintaining projects in consultation to our producers. I also work as the consultant for digital first content to our member stations across the country. And I'm one of the consultants. And a major part of my job is social media, both in strategy and in implementation. And so that's a lot, and it all comes down to one. And I am a lovely team of one. So believe me, I know when I hear you say there's so many people here that do social media, but also do other things. So I want to talk to you guys about telling your local story through your social media accounts, and maybe even building community based on it. But it's not going to be very minutia. We're going to talk pretty high level and kind of dive into how I look at audience development for projects and how that can apply to your own work. So I'm going to do screen sharing in just a moment. I've got some slides for you. You should be proud of me. I've got slides. Okay, just a moment. And you can't see this. No. Okay, cool. So, like I said, my name is Leslie Datsis, and I'm with PBS Digital Studios. Hello. So before you even think about social media strategy and starting out with social, you should probably start thinking about what your audience is already. And you can easily do this more than you think. The screenshot that I actually have here is from Arlington Public Library's blog. I'm from lovely Arlington, Virginia, and I'm a great user. Shout out to the connection. I love the connection. And they gather data that I find very useful. And I'm sure that it's pretty easy to find stuff for you guys too. After a year's worth, you can dive in and say, what are people checking out? Are they looking at ebooks? Is there a rise in ebooks, or is there nostalgia for physical books? Are people using audiobooks more? And then also you can do a roundup of your events for the year. What are you working on? What did really well? What didn't do well? Once you know where things that you're doing well, where there are actual starting points, you can actually find the gaps within those starting points. So when you can find those gaps, you can actually start deciding how you can use your social media to actually tell your story, both to that audience and then also the gaps. So when I think about the gaps for audiences, it's very easy to be general with your targeting. And we had this problem at Digital Studios early on too. So PBS Digital Studios content actually reaches mostly 18 to 34 or to 45 audiences, because at PBS we have a lot of kids content, and then we reach seniors with our broadcast prime programming. And so with PBS Digital Studios, we're able to find the stuff that's in the middle. So, but for us to do that, we can't just say, I want a show to reach all audiences that are ages 18 to 34, because we're all different people. Such as you can't say, I want to reach seniors, or I want to reach women. women are different. Each senior is different. They all have their favorite hobbies. They all have different interests. So when you're thinking about age ranges and demographics and gaps in those ways, I want you to consider being specific about your targeting in that way. So if you want to say, I want to reach millennials, you want to find out what are their hobbies. Do they have careers already? Are they just starting out? Are they post grads? Are they freaking out about what's to come after they've graduated from college? Also, if you have a goal of reaching seniors, that means many different things. Are they likely to use public transit or not? Are they retired or are they still working? So yeah, to give you just an idea of what specific targeting looks like for our shows, I've written up a few examples. And of course, this would be, for, just a program that we would work on. But then you can also apply this to your work. So I'm going to break down each of these for you. This food show will target ages 18 to 34 that tries new restaurants each week. The way that this is specific is the trying new restaurants each week part. What makes that specific is that that would make it a metropolitan show. That wouldn't necessarily be something that you would do in a rural area, maybe a suburban, but not necessarily rural. So when I think of like New Yorker shows, things that take place in LA or in Chicago, things like that. Okay, so the next one is this series highlights museums. That highlights museums will be for those that interact with museums on Instagram. So those that are a part of the movement where they're taking photos, putting themselves along with the photos of the art, and not just being passive in how they interact at a museum. Number 3 is this role-playing game show will be for frequent players of Dungeons and Dragons. What makes this specific is that it's for frequent players. We're not going to do like a 101 session on what Dungeons and Dragons is. What does a dungeon master do? What are the different types of things you do in the game? You kind of just go in knowing that the people are going to watch it already know what's happening. So those are just some kind of examples that you can think about with targeted statements in your head. So I want you guys to think about that in mind. And a lot of those statements have come from us doing brainstorming sessions. And the brainstorming has actually come from our mission statement of what we consider to be a digital studio show. Does it turn a local conversation into a national one? Is it for specific ages? Is it educational? Is it informative? Is it for a curious audience? A way you can think about those kinds of statements, you can actually go back to kind of your mission statements or your vision statements, your core values, and everything that you kind of put on the about page of your website. You can actually utilize those in more ways than one on your marketing plan or your social media plan. So I actually have a brainstorming exercise, and feel free to just screenshot this. This is something that I use quite a lot with our team. So you write at the top of the paper, at the top of a page, or on a whiteboard, how can social media serve our core value of blank? And so if you have a core value of education, you would say, how can social media serve our core value of education? You set a timer for 5 minutes, and then you write down as many things as possible. You don't erase anything. You don't write out or mark out anything or anything like that. What I tend to do is actually use Post-it notes, and I'm killing trees, I guess, but you write a different suggestion for each Post-it note. And then you would do this straight for 5 minutes. After the timer goes out, you go through all of your options and then circle your favorite 5 and then share with the group. What's really nice is that you're setting up a judgment-free zone with your entire group. And then understanding that these kinds of brainstorming sessions lead to new stuff. So there's no such thing as a wrong answer here. Really, there isn't. And I have to preface that a lot with the team sometimes, because you also have people that they want to say, well, what about this? We can't do that because of this. Now you have to start with pie in the sky options and then kind of work your way down. So that's a brainstorming exercise that I would consider all of you participate in. Yeah. So after you do that, I actually want you to start doing some research around you and ask, what are other libraries doing? You can, what I would actually suggest doing is mixing both metropolitan cities with suburban and rural areas, because I don't know, like we see great examples of libraries using social media. They all, they're most likely in metropolitan cities. I think of DC Public Library, I think of New York Public Library, things like that. And they're doing a wonderful job. And however, if you are living in a rural area, those social media strategies and the ways that you do event planning may not fit the mold that you're looking for. So I would also consider looking at other libraries that are in suburban areas or in smaller cities, or even county libraries in that way. And then you accumulate them. Now, the way that I accumulate things is by using Twitter lists and Facebook lists. This is actually a Twitter list from the Digital Studios page. You can actually, so when you go to different, on your Facebook page, when you go to different pages, you can like them. And then once you go to your page, you can click on see pages feed. And then this will pop up and it'll be a separate feed of just things that you like. And then on Twitter, I use Twitter lists religiously. This is Smart Things for Smart People Twitter list that I use. So, and that we use for our social strategy. So that can include anything from science, from science centers, to museums, to libraries, to archiving institutes, things like that. Because and we want to share that stuff because we have a feeling that our audience would like them. So, and then you can also see the different lists that I create here. We have them by people in the DMV area that's local to us, educational YouTubers, because we create educational content on YouTube. So creating those lists there would be highly valuable for you. So when you've thought about where are the gaps and where you want to serve those and like audiences that you are serving. You've done a lot of research and now you're ready for implementation. So the first rule I would say of trying things out is that consistency is key. You don't want to post something once a month or you don't want to post something and then not look at your page for another couple of weeks. You want to be able to be active and engaged with what's happening there. So I would say post several times a week. 3 to 5 times would be great for people that are just starting out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, wherever you want to get started. Respond to every single comment. I kind of took this from the YouTube world when I started out as a YouTube creator, that if you're trying to cultivate a community, people want to hear back from you. So doing a back and forth there, and even if it's just a simple thank you, people will appreciate that. So some great examples of easy posts for posting several times a week is questions of the day, book recommendations, sharing things from other pages, reminding people what kind of stuff you're doing at your branch. You can also share posts from local resources. I know Arlington Public Library shares things from the Arlington County government sometimes, things about schools, museums, coffee shops, things where there's not necessarily an overlap in your audience, but you know that they will find this work valuable. And then after you share a few times, you can use this opportunity as a social swap. Call up the local museum and say, hey, I will tweet this for you if you tweet this for us, or it can be a little bit more nuanced than that, but you know what I mean. So I have just a few examples of some really great posts that have come from all of these rules right here. So I'm just going to go through them one by one. This first post from Austin Public Library is talking about how they are closed for President's Day, but so this is serving two purposes. They are actually reminding their audience that they're not going to be open at that time, but they're also reminding them of their virtual library options. They're saying, hey, we have this option. Did you not know this exists? So it's basically turning two posts into one that serve each other. Okay, and so if you don't use social media to talk about the days that you're closed, I would recommend definitely doing that. This post from Lawrence Public Library, I've actually gone through all their social, and I really like what they're doing. They post this about once a week, and they asking their audience what they're reading. And just take a look. There are 52 comments. They didn't really have to think about some like a perfect amount of copy or something amazing, or just like like the perfect asset. Like, they're just asking a simple question: what are you reading? And then people will respond. The third one down here is from Spokane County Library, and they're a part of the Book Face Friday hashtag movement. Where you can kind of see what it is you're putting a book in front of a person that would kind of work in the real world. And that's been a huge community builder on Instagram without involving libraries. And now that people are going to be able to be a part of it too. So here's a couple of more options. This Sherman Library tweet made me laugh for so long. Says, please don't feed books to our trash cans. We keep them on a strict diet of our hopes and dreams. So I remember when I was in university, I would see a lot of books just kind of sitting on trash cans like this, mostly in the printing room because there wasn't a lot of places where you could put them, but then people forget about them. So it's just an easy way to kind of subtweet your audience, or even talk about library life, things like that. This post from Darien Library has a great way of kind of introducing a staff member to the audience. And the staff member is bringing a book recommendation to the audience. And then it's just kind of funny. Feeling alone this Valentine's, you got a book to banish your blues if you're a knitter. And then here are a couple of more examples. I'm from Mississippi, so I was already attracted to one from Mississippi State Libraries, where they use Trivia Tuesday. The bulldog officially becomes Mississippi State's mascot in 1905. So just think about all of the the old archival photos that you have, or any type of historical documents that you have that are local to you. You can easily use those as social assets in your life. So the second option here, I love this Tumblr account, definitely. So what they tend to do is create books that are evergreen to what's happening. So the Winter Olympics has started, and so they have found a bunch of books about skiing. And so it's advertising what kind of books are in their library. It's giving book recommendations to a general audience, and it's creating this really great theme that you can use over and over again. So you can actually, in the wintertime, you can use this same group of books. So those are just a few examples that I have for you. And I know in terms of social media land, especially if you have a job that social media is just your only job and nothing else, you ask yourself, how will you have time to do this? And trust me, I've been on this road so many times as someone I've been a video editor, but I also would run the Twitter account of the production company. In my current job, social media is only 30% of my work, but it's a very important one. So firstly, I would actually move to the second bullet point here, is when you look at your calendar and make sure you block off time for social. So I gave an example of, if social media is 25% of your duties, block off 1 hour on Monday for scheduling posts, and then 30 minutes Tuesday through Friday for responding to comments and sharing posts. And then, of course, if that doesn't feel right for you, if you want to look in the morning and then in the afternoon, you feel free to do that. But this is a great starting point if you need one. Schedule posts in advance. You can actually do this on everything at this point except for Instagram. You can do that through Instagram's Hootsuite API, but that's a long thing down the road. But you can schedule for sure on the platform on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. So you can use those things. A couple of different things you can use, like different social media sources you can use, is Hootsuite. It's also free. You can use that for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I personally love TweetDeck's layout. I use TweetDeck for all of my Twitter lists that I showed you earlier. Sprout and Buffer are paid services, but you can maybe take a look at them and see what would be great for you. Lots of those come with different types of analytics or asset management across different departments, things like that. Metadata for sure. And then CrowdTangle was actually bought by Facebook last year, so it's also free. And so I use CrowdTangle for my Facebook lists. I know I showed you that one giant list you can make on your page, but if you want to use multiple lists, you can definitely use CrowdTangle. And then you can also see the percentage of a post and how well it's doing. So for instance, it tells you if a post is doing like 30% higher than it normally does at that time on that day. So, and then when you're thinking about scheduling everything, make sure that you are making multiple posts about things that are informational and are event-based at once. So, because not everyone is going to see that one post that you post on Facebook at that one time. Especially if it's things like you being closed for President's Day, make sure you put that multiple times during the weeks so people know what's going on. Okay. So those were the ones that I showed you before were kind of instances of telling your story, but I wanted to go down a little bit further and showing, that we need to use social media to kind of value our worth and show our value to new audiences and to extending audiences. We at PBS are definitely doing that. So you can, if I were you, I would go through to screenshot all of these questions and see what are some great ways you can rely those with social. So what is the history of your branch? Can your branch help tell the story of your town's history? When in high school, I was in Columbus, Mississippi, and then they had this great archiving institute of all of like a local grave in town during the Civil War. And there were just so many juicy things there that I learned about the town because of my of that particular branch. What services do you provide that are underutilized? What are services that people know about a lot? Do a lot of people use your internet, or do people use Overdrive through your account? Do they take your classes? Do a lot of people attend book clubs in your area? You can tout both of those in different ways. And then does your branch have local success stories based on those services? So, and I showed you just an example of a staff member being shown on social. See if your staff, if members of your staff is comfortable being on social like that. Go ahead and incorporate them in your strategy, because it feels very different to get a tweet from someone that's nameless and faceless. But if you put someone else, if you show someone's face early on, you kind of create it's not an actual relationship in a way, but it's makes you feel a little bit more homey on your social platforms. I'm going to show one example that we did here at PBS actually very recently. This is a video, I'm not going to play it, but this is a video that came from Vegas PBS about, and it was showing how a U.S. Army veteran helped get all the things they needed for in terms of job applications, all the cards he needed to get started on his own business. And he wouldn't have been able to do that without the local PBS station. So being able to tout those things is super important. And then you can actually do that on a national scale. So again, this is another example of a local conversation being turned into a national story, because our member stations are all connected in that way. And I can imagine library branches are all connected in that way as well. Okay, so here are just a few more examples of how I've seen people be able to tell their story through social. I really like this from Alma Public Library, where they are showing a calendar of their full month of all the events that they're doing. And I see, on websites, on libraries' websites, I see a full calendar, but it's not always optional to be able to look at that here. So it's so having that kind of stuff on social is super important, and having that brought to your having that more accessible. So what you're doing with these calendars here is that you're going where your audience is going. And then also more archival footage from Austin Public Library, and they're actually asking about the context of the photo that has been in their library. So asking more about that context has been able to create a back and forth with their audience. And then also, if my library card does give me access to lynda.com, that's a really great thing to know. And also a great reminder. I might not know that from the first time I got my library card. So here are just a couple of examples should we give you. Now, whatever you're doing here, please experiment for at least 90 days. You don't want to try a post and say it's not doing well and then not do it ever again. So try a group of posts in a specific way, whether it be informational, whether it be funny, whether you're talking about events. Experiment with different kinds of things for at least 90 days. Having one data point is better than not having, is not better than having multiple data points. Multiple data points are super important in that way. Quick rundown, I'm almost done. Social media myths to think about. You do not, myth number one, you need to be everywhere. You do not. You want to start off with just one and doing it really well. I would rather have a branch do 1 or 2 accounts really well than 4 mediocrely, Myth number 2, you need to make all of your own content. No, you can share from other libraries, you can share from other accounts, you can share from your local resources. Myth number 3, social media replaces other types of marketing. That's not true. You need print marketing, you need other types of local advertising, and they kind of work together in that way. And then number 4 is put your money behind everything. You don't have to put money behind every post you're making. Focus, if you're looking into doing ad campaigns, I would focus on doing them in the very beginning, or like something that's the most important, such as giving a call to action there. So look up these myths. I promise that they don't. You don't have to do them. I would actually emphasize this one the most right here. Social media replaces other types of marketing. Not true at all. They kind of work hand in hand together. So quick things, next steps. Make sure you have your logos for all of your social media places on flyers, pasted all over your library, things like that. And make sure that you're using updated logos. This is an outdated logo right here. Check every 6 months on Google for new logos. Collaborate with other libraries. And I found this great one from Boston Public Library after the Super Bowl, where they lost the bet. So the Patriots people showcased it in the Eagles section in their library. And then finally, UGC content. Posting photos with a hashtag, being involved in greater conversations. This is from Banned Books Week. And yeah, so start thinking about like how people can interact with you as well as you're interacting with them. So thanks. I know it was very rushed in the moment, but it's only 30 minutes and I didn't want to mess up everyone's time. And so if there were any questions, I wasn't sure. But I think we're good to go. I wanted to make sure everybody got the slides in before I left. So I wanted to thank everyone for coming and let us know if you have any questions. I am on Twitter at @FoundHerGrail, like the Holy Grail, @FoundHerGrail. If you have any questions there or need any clarifications on this short webinar, I'm happy to give them to you. All right. Thanks everyone for having and have a great week.